Hi all, so I'm going to start doing a bunch of stitch dictionary videos, starting with the basics and moving along to more complicated ones. You will see I'm also doing the same in crochet and knitting, so you can check between both if you're a multi-skilled person or wanting to learn both. But this one is for knitting, and I'm just using some basic 4mm bamboo bamboo needles. Now these are quite long. Unfortunately I don't have any shorter ones because I normally work with cable needles, but I thought I'd show you how to do this on straight needles. It might be easier for you. I do recommend, if you're just starting out and doing small things, get smaller needles. You don't want really long ones if you can help it, because you see they are quite long. But that's the 4mm, and this is just a basic DK weight yarn. So I always, for a basic fabric, you would normally use, if it's a DK weight yarn, you will use 4mm needles. So always try to stick with that while you're learning, and then you can go either needle size higher or lower, or half a size when you work out what your tension is and what more you need. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to do the basic knit cast on for the minute. There are lots of different ones. I am self-taught, so it may be that I get the name slightly wrong, but if you search for knit cast on, it's usually somewhere along this lines anyway. So if I've got it wrong, please do correct me in the comments, but this is what I call the knit cast on. Okay, so we're just going to need a slip knot to start with. Ooh. So to the slip knots, what I do is I put my tail end there and my working yarn there, and then I pick that up like that, and then I twist this so that my tail end is gone over my working yarn, so that I can then grab the working yarn and pull it through that loop. If you didn't get that, there are other methods, but I don't actually work with any other slip knot methods because this is the one I find that works for me. Okay, there's two different ways to knit. There's continental knitting, which for a right-handed person is having the yarn in your left hand, and then there's English throw method, though I can't throw, my finger doesn't do that, so I just wrap, which you'd have your yarn in your right hand. I can do both, so I will show you both. Okay, so if we start with the basic English throw method, you're going to put your yarn on your right, and just pop your needle through that loop that you created, that slip knot. You want both of them on, and then I tension my yarn by hooking it around my little finger, and then I go over, under and over, and then that one is the one that I use to manoeuvre the yarn. Okay, and so the yarn is on the underside here. You can just see really long knit needles make this a little complicated, but and so what you're going to do, this needle is at the bottom, the one that's in your right hand is on the bottom, and so that's the needle you'll be working with. You'll be transferring onto that once you've already got your stitches, but while we're building the first stitches, we're going to build them on the left needle. Okay, so we're going to take our yarn and we're going to wrap it underneath that needle, up over the top of that needle, but back under that needle. And so it's just coming across that gap there, you see? And then you're going to use this needle to hook that new strand that you're creating there through the loop, and there's your stitch just there. We'll pull it out a minute so you can see. And what we're going to do, because we're casting on, is we're going to take your left needle, go underneath the stitch, come back up from the bottom to the top of that stitch, and we're just going to transfer onto that needle. Okay, so I'll do that again. So we go into the stitch, the loop there, on the underside, we take our yarn, we go underneath, and then around to on top of that one, and underneath that one, and then this one will hook that thread through your loop, look, and there, and then we're going to just go underneath from the bottom up and transfer it over. Okay, and you're just going to keep doing this until you've got as many stitches as you need. Try to keep your tension reasonably even. What you want is to be able to comfortably fit your two needles into that stitch so that you can do your next stitch. If you have it too tight, pull it really tight, it's going to be really hard, if not impossible, to get your needle through that hole. So keep it just loose enough that you can pop it through, so that when you do your yarn over and pull through, you can still manoeuvre around, and that's it. But you don't want it to, if you do a really loose one, so if I just do a loose one, so no real tension around here a minute. See, with no real tension, it becomes a little fiddlier to pull through. And then if I left that really loose, you see the stitch, you got the nice neat ones there, but then this one, because it's loose, it's just baggy, and if you did that the whole time, your whole finish would be quite baggy. So try to keep a good tension. You want your needle, your yarn, to be able to move up and down smoothly on your hook, on your needle, but you don't want it to get stuck or to move too easily. It's got to have some friction, and that way if you drop your needle, your yarn isn't going to come off your hook, off your needle. I'm sorry I keep saying hook, it's because I crochet more than I knit nowadays. But so you can see how it creates a nice neat one without being too tight or too loose. So we'll just do some more, and this process, I call it the knit one, which I'm pretty sure is the correct term, is because you're basically knitting the stitch, but instead of transferring over to your right needle as you would in the normal knit stitch, which I will show you later, you're transferring here onto your left needle so that you can actually create the amount of stitches you need. And so if your project said to start cast on 20, you do 20 of these loops, and that's as simple as it is, just going along, wrapping around and transferring it over. Okay, so I hope that's helpful for the basic knit cast on with the right hand, the English throw method. I'm now going to show you how to do it with the Continental method. So I'll just take this off. Now you're going to start the same with the slip knot and popping it on just like you would before, but this time I'm going to hold my yarn in the same hand I use for crocheting, and that's on your left hand for me because I'm right-handed, and then you're going to hold your work like that. So hold it with this thumb and this finger, so this one is free to manoeuvre. Okay, and then you're going to do the same process. You're going to go into that stitch. I find it a little fiddlier to start this way, so I normally cast on English throw and then knit in Continental. But all we're going to do for this one, again, you start with your needle on the underside just like you do for normal, for English throw, and remember we needed to wrap the yarn around, so we're going to go around. So we've taken the yarn all the way around and over just like before, and then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to change. I have to hold it down a little to start with there, just while we're getting started, but you see how we've now created that stitch pulling through, and then we're going to transfer over. Make sure your needle is on the underside for your casting on and your knitting, and again we want to bring the yarn over, so we're just going to go over there and around. You can go that way, but it's a little more complicated that way. I prefer that way. And then use your finger to help guide it while you're starting off, because it does like to disappear a little. For me it does anyway. Once you've got your base and you're doing the actual knitting, this is much easier to knit basic with, which I will show you. But the cast on can be done this way as well. It just takes a little more manoeuvring to make sure that you can get your stitches in the right place. But again, all the tension rules still apply. Keep it even so it can move around freely, but without so freely that it would fall. See, if you've got it a good tension, it won't fall off if you drop them, especially with bamboo needles. So if you're a loose knitter, bamboo needles would be a really good way to go. If you're a really tight knitter, you might want to have metal needles that are smoother to manoeuvre and they don't grip the yarn quite so much. So trial and error and you'll find some that work for you. But that's the basics. So the actual process is the same. It's just dependent on which hand you hold your yarn. That's the only difference between Continental and English throw method of knitting. There are many other ways to knit. Some have the yarn coming up around your neck and all that. I don't know much about them, so I won't be doing them, but I will show you the English throw and the Continental method for each stitch that I do. There really isn't much difference, just a slight different manoeuvring. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Any questions, pop them down in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. And check back soon for me showing you how to do the knit stitch. Alright, I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.